How's it going, everyone? My name is Leopoldo Palma, and this is my level, Billy's Backyard from the game Billy Bug Catcher. Here we have three different mechanics. We have one where you grab a leaf and you place it onto a silhouette, allowing the player to get over a water obstacle, which if you fall into, makes the player restart. Next, we have a pushable object. We have to get past all these pushables here to find objects and to just create the path, clear the path to the picnic table. And lastly, we have a growing a plant mechanic here. Player will pick up a water bucket, place it on the plant, and the plant will grow. And to showcase that real fast before we get into the logic, I'll go ahead and play this. So here's the leaf, we pick it up, got a visual feedback, audio feedback for the player. And then here we have the object being pushed out of the way. Next, we have the player picking up a water bucket and growing it. And we can't keep interacting with it because we have no more water buckets. So let's get into the logic of it. We broke up the leaf into three different blueprints. One is the leaf that you can pick up. One is the silhouette leaf, which will turn into the actual leaf when you place it on there. And another one is just a static leaf, which is just for the environment. So I'm going to pull up my third person character as well, because this is going to help us visualize everything. So first and foremost, we're going to start with an input action interact. This is a blueprint interface that I added to all of my blueprints that you can interact with. It's going to get all the actors that can that are able to be interacted with, and then we're going to have it respond to code if you interact with it. First off, we're going to start with the leaf. All of my blueprints have a HUD interact that pops up when the player gets close to or inside the trigger collision. Next, we have the interact logic here. On interact, we're going to play the sound that the player picked up the leaf. Then we're going to reach out to the player and we're going to get the number of leaves collected, which is a variable that I added down here for the player to store. And then we're going to add 1. So every time the player collects a leaf, it's going to add to that integer. Next, we have we're going to destroy that actor because the player picked it up. Then we're going to get the number of leaves and we're going to add 1 to the number of leaves that they are currently holding. And if the number of leaves that they're holding is greater than 0, then if true, the player is going to be marked as having a leaf. Next, we're going to look at the leaf placemat. Again, we can interact with the leaf placemat here with the interact HUD when you get close to it, and it's going to pop up on the screen. On interact, we're going to check if the player can place a leaf, and by default it's going to be set to true. Yes to true. And when it's going to reach out to the player and see how many leaves the player is holding. Then we're going to check if the player has a leaf. So can they place it? Yes. Does the player have a leaf? If true, we're going to play a sound, which is the audio feedback that the player placed down the leaf. Then we're going to set the visibility for the actual leaf, and here we can check it here. Let's go ahead and check visibility, visible. We're going to mark it to true right there. And then we're going to enable the collision of that leaf so that the player doesn't keep falling through the leaf, because this is just a silhouette. And then we're going to subtract 1 leaf from the player's inventory, and we're going to check here with some logic if the player has no more leaves. Then if this is true, then we're going to mark the player as having no leaf. And before we end here, we're going to make sure that we set can place to false, so the player cannot place another leaf in that spot. Next, we're going to go over the plant logic here. Again, we have the HUD here for interacting. And on interact, we're going to check if the player can interact. If the player can interact, Then we're going to reach out to the player character, um, and we're going to check if they have a bucket. And this bucket is, the logic is pretty simple. The player is going to go to the bucket. By default, they don't have a bucket. If it's false, if the player does not have a bucket, then we're going to allow the player to collect a bucket. And we're going to play some audio feedback here. Destroy the bucket to simulate them getting the bucket, and put that in the player's inventory. Next, if the player does have a bucket, then we're going to play this animation here and audio feedback, and the plant will grow using this animation timeline. And we're going to make sure that the player expends that bucket, no longer having a bucket, and we're going to make sure that the plant cannot be interacted with again. So you can't go grab another bucket and keep interacting with the same plant. Lastly, we have the pushable um, mechanic. So this is pretty simple. The player is going to just go up to the pushable object and interact with it. It's going to simulate physics, and then the player can move it with a push or with their body. And that is pretty overall, not too bad. Um, we do have a bunch of smaller mechanics here, like collecting seeds. We have collecting fireflies. We have interacting with bugs, and so on and so forth. But overall, this was a pretty fun project, and I hope to make some more projects in the future, maybe improving on this one and seeing where this takes me. So I hope you guys enjoyed this walkthrough, and hopefully y'all come back and see my future projects. Thank you.